Long after the winter tourists stopped coming, Elk Ridge felt like a place pressed between pages of ice. The valley held its breath beneath snow-loaded pines, and the only signs of motion were the curling chimney smoke and, twice a day, the rattle of the postal truck over the single-lane bridge. Harriet Cooper drove that truck. At 54, she knew every dog that barked at her wheels, every shutter that needed oil, every gravestone blanched by wind. Her life, like the mail, followed established routes. That ended on a Tuesday in March, when the sky was the pale color of a turned-over teacup. Harriet was sorting the dead letter shelf, envelopes with no forwarding address, wrong zip codes, or ink run into illegibility, when she noticed a bundle she did not remember scanning. 6 tan envelopes lay wedged behind a box of Christmas cards returned from South Carolina. No stamps were peeled, no corners torn. Across each envelope, in neat blue fountain pen cursive, was the same return address: General Delivery, Elk Ridge, CO 81254. The first envelope's postmark made Harriet frown. June 11, 2028. That was 4 years in the future. Her supervisor, Ron, was outside smoking, so she slit the flap herself. Postal law allowed employees to open undeliverable mail to locate clues, but Harriet felt a prickle on her neck, as if someone were watching from the unheated lobby. Inside lay a single folded sheet. To whom it may concern, I, Ethan Mallory, confess that on 9th of July 2028 I will rob Burnham Hardware of 1600, brandishing a replica pistol. I expect no forgiveness, only record. E.M. Harriet read it 3 times, her breath fogging the strip light above the sorting desk. Ethan was 16, lanky, and worked Saturdays restocking shelves at that very hardware store. The note was not apology, demand, or prank. It was statement. Quiet, irrevocable. She opened the other 5 envelopes. Each was dated further ahead, each admitted a crime: an arson in 2029, an untraceable poisoning in 2030, a hit-and-run in 2031. None of the names were strangers. All were town residents. A chill radiated up her spine that had nothing to do with mountain cold. The envelope's barcodes, sprayed during machine sorting, were identical. They had entered the postal system right here in Elk Ridge and somehow returned to her hands before their official birthing date. It was impossible. And yet the ink in her palm existed. Harriet placed the letters back inside the bundle, tucked them under her coat, and locked them in her locker before Ron returned. For the rest of the shift, she missorted a half-dozen packages, her mind snagging on the question that would not dislodge. If you knew a crime was coming, and the proof sat trembling in your coat, what would you do? That night, she brought the letters to her kitchen table. The cabin smelled of pine cleaner and old coffee. Harriet's husband had died 8 years earlier, and since then conversation came only from the radio. Tonight even the radio stayed silent. Moonlight licked the counter as she compared postmarks to calendar, ink loops to memories of handwriting lessons at Elk Ridge Elementary. Whoever wrote these letters favored the same cursive drills she had taught 4th graders during a short substitute stint decades ago. Wide loops on Ys, straight back ascenders. At 1:14 a.m., she wrote Ethan an anonymous note, sealing $10 inside. Do something good with this. Every choice branches. She walked it to his parents' mailbox, snow squeaking beneath her boots. The letter slid in like a whispered prayer. Driving home, she realized she had broken federal law tampering with private correspondence, but the guilt felt smaller than the fear of seeing Ethan's photo years from now in a Denver Post crime column. Spring crept down the ridges and Harriet half convinced herself she'd overreacted. Then, in May, a 7th envelope appeared in the dead letter shelf, addressed again to General Delivery. Postmark, Jan 04, 2029. Confession. I set fire to 117 Lodgepole Lane. I did not know Mrs. Abernathy was inside. The signature was printed only S. 117. Lodgepole Lane was a single-story clapboard where Edna Abernathy, 72, brewed choke cherry jam and donated quilts to the VFW. Harriet drove there after work with a bag of spare smoke detectors left over from a county safety fair. Edna laughed but let Harriet install them. You always were a worrier. That night, Harriet returned the key to her municipal locker and tested the combination 3 times. Someone inside the post office was depositing letters into the dead letter shelf without scanning them, because no electronic record existed. That meant either Ron, who could not operate the sorting software without muttering profanities, or herself. The thought that she might be sleepwalking into the building to mail warnings to herself was so absurd that she laughed aloud, and then stopped, her pulse banging in her throat. She examined the envelopes again. The paper brand, Regent Cotton 24LB, matched the ream stocked in the supply closet 2 doors behind her sorting desk. Harriet's hands trembled. She remembered a childhood riddle. If you receive a letter from the future, who really wrote it? She bought a cheap nanny cam and hid it in the ceiling vent, angled toward the dead letter shelf. For 2 weeks, the footage captured dust motes, and once, Ron scratching his belly while looking for a stapler. No phantom mailer. But on the 3rd Sunday, 2:17 a.m., the camera recorded movement. A figure in postal blues entering with a shoebox of envelopes. The resolution blurred the face, yet Harriet saw a telltale hitch in the left shoulder. Her own old car accident injury. Monday morning, she watched the clip on her phone until nausea forced her to the restroom. She splashed water on her cheeks, staring into the mirror, wondering if time could fold the way mountain roads did, hairpin over hairpin. If so, why choose letters as the vehicle? Why confessions instead of warnings? Unless the confessions were the warnings. Summer arrived scented with wet stone. On July 9th, 2028, the date the first confession had promised robbery, Harriet took an unpaid day off. She loitered among the lawnmowers in Burnham Hardware, pretending to compare brands. Ethan worked the cash register. At 3:58 p.m., he slipped something dark from beneath the counter into his backpack. Harriet's heart thudded like a trapped grouse. She stepped forward. "Leave the bag here, Ethan." He spun, eyes wide. "Miss Cooper? What?" She nodded at the bag. His throat worked. Slowly, he unzipped it. Inside lay a plastic pistol, the orange safety tip sawed clean. A wad of Bill's rubber-banded tights sat beside it. In the office, the owner, Joe Burnham, listened as Harriet spun a half-truth. She'd noticed discrepancies, suspected shoplifting, decided to check. No police were called. Ethan's mother arrived, pale with relief and anger. Harriet left through the back alley, shaking so hard she could barely grasp the truck's steering wheel. The robbery had not happened, yet the confession had been correct about Ethan's intent. By interfering, she had twisted the predicted line. Maybe that was the letter's purpose. Maybe her future self, or whoever, had decided that the only way she would listen was through the solemnity of a confession. But then why not simply warn? Why cloak each message in guilt? 3 months later, a new envelope arrived. Harriet recognized her own name on the confession before she opened it. "I struck my brother Daniel Cooper on 12th of May 2030 during an argument outside the VFW. The blow killed him instantly. I fled. I cannot claim accident." Harriet sank onto the wooden bench behind the postal counter. Daniel had not been home in 15 years. He wandered oil rigs in Texas and occasionally shipped her snow globes from truck stop gift shops. They spoke only Christmas mornings. The letter felt like a fist tightening around her life. What offense, what tidal pull, could drag her to kill the brother she once pushed on swings? She pictured Daniel sliding into some barroom rudeness, pictured her own hands knotted and white. The thought left her sick. She wrote Daniel a real letter, begging him to visit, to talk about anything except politics and old grievances. She mailed it certified, wanting the green return card as proof that some future could still be negotiated. Autumn cut the leaves from aspens, and merchants boarded up for the lull between hikers and skiers. Harriet drove the route in a world turning gray. She felt time itself gray around her as well, like film exposed to light but left undeveloped. She fired up the dusty desktop computer in the library, combing local archives. In 1946, Elk Ridge's telegraph office had burned down. A line in the newspaper caught her eye. Several leather mailbags discovered charred but unopened, scheduled for destruction by Dead Letter Office. No further details. She found a folk tale recorded by a 6th grade class in 1972 about letters that came through cracks in winter. The teacher's margin note, likely legend, no postal confirmation. Time, Harriet thought. Sometimes left clues like mismatched stamps. Late November, ice haloed every street lamp. Ron locked the front door after closing shift and said, "Got something odd for you?" He held out a single envelope addressed to her. Postmark, same day. Return address, general delivery, Elk Ridge, 2042. She opened it on the spot. "Harriet, tomorrow at dusk a man in a red parka will wait beside your truck. He means to kill you. Do not walk outside alone." H. No confession this time, only instruction. Signed with her initial. "Prank?" Ron guessed, smelling the fear that must have risen from her skin. She shook her head. "I'll file a report." She did nothing of the sort. Instead, she drove home, heart drumming like sleet against tin. The mountain was quiet, the air smelling of juniper. Her porch light had blown out again. Inside, she wedged a chair beneath the knob and sat with a cast-iron skillet across her knees until sunrise. No red parka appeared. If fate had been waiting, perhaps it found her defiance uncooperative. The next morning, though, tire prints marred the fresh snow outside her cabin. Not hers. Tracks led up the lane and stopped 20 feet from her door, then reversed back toward town. The killer could have existed, or the letter caused someone to test her reactions, or her own dread had conjured everything except the marks. Her mind was now a hall of mirrors. Harriet requested unused vacation for the week before Christmas. She told Ron she needed to visit a cousin in Cannon City. Instead, she packed the bundle of letters into a gym bag, along with spare clothes, her father's switchblade, and enough cash to rent a cabin in New Mexico. If the murderer in red imagined her trapped like a snowshoe hare, he would find no prints. Before leaving, she slipped one more envelope onto the dead letter shelf. She had composed it the previous night, cradling coffee under a lamp while the storm rattled the eaves. Confession. I stole possibility from time itself. By intercepting, I rewrote fates that were not mine to change. If consequence must fall, let it fall on me alone. H. Cooper, 17 DEC 2024. She deliberately misaddressed it, to no one, nowhere, so it would linger. She felt lighter after sealing the flap. The highway down valley twisted through canyons white as bleached bone. Snow gusted off ridgelines in translucent banners. Harriet's wipers beat time to her pulse. At each mile marker, she expected a red parka to emerge from roadside drifts. Hand raised to stop her. None did. In Salida, she boarded the night bus south. Only 3 passengers sat beneath fluorescent flicker, a mother with a sleeping toddler, an old man chewing sunflower seeds, and Harriet Cooper clutching a gym bag full of future confessions. She settled near the back. The driver shifted gears and the bus coughed onto the highway. As the town lights dwindled, Harriet pressed her forehead to the cold window. She pictured the dead letter shelf tomorrow morning, her envelope waiting like a quiet bomb. I stole possibility from time. Yet mail formed the veins of the country. Letters always sought movement. Where would hers travel? To the larger dead letter office in St. Paul? To incineration? To the hands, the future hands, that kept asking her to act? She removed a blank envelope from her purse, uncapped a pen. General Delivery, Elk Ridge, CO 81254. Postmark, 17 Jan 2044. She hesitated, listening to the rhythmic hum of tires over asphalt. Then she wrote, I confess that on this day I fled, uncertain whether I saved lives or ruined them. If you are reading, you already know the outcome. I ask only that you remember the cold on the window glass and the sound a bus makes leaving home. H. She sealed it, kissed the flap, slipped it into the seat back pocket. Someday a cleaner might find it and drop it in a mailbox. Or perhaps she herself, older, limping, bent, would place it there after all, continuing the loop. The bus climbed the pass, engine droning, carrying her into a night as wide as history. Harriet closed her eyes, unsure whether she was escaping fate or fulfilling it, but certain of one thing. Wherever the letters came from, they trusted her to keep carrying them forward, across the thin line between what hadn't happened yet and what never would.